Hello everyone, Brother Eric Nelson here. Glad to have you with us today. Today this is a very short video where I have decided to profile the late astronaut Alan Bean. And I invite you to listen to this man in his own words, and you decide for yourself, or rather ask yourself the question, did this guy really walk on the moon? I'm not picking on astronaut Alan Bean per se, but I think his profile, like many others, represents an interesting microcosm as to how the world really functions. If you haven't figured it out yet, the world functions on a foundation of lies, all in order to brainwash the sheeple masses. Astronaut Alan Bean was a member of the Apollo 12 spacecraft mission, and the excerpts are taken from a great documentary by Bart Seibel, if I remember his name correctly. I did check out his work. It's been quite a few years ago, and like everything else, if you want to research the truth is always out there. Bart Seibel's work or body of work has been prevalent since at least 2004, and he also has a website that you can visit where he has a lot of interesting information. The first portion of this video also contains excerpts from Astronauts Gone Wild. At this time, I invite you to open up your heart, open up your mind, listen carefully, start critically thinking, question everything, because truly the world runs and functions on a foundation of lies. Again, thank you for tuning in today, my friends, and enjoy the rest of the video.
Roger, Neil. We just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get the playback, we can sort of correlate what we're saying. Thank you very much.
Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number one window, and there isn't any reflected light. We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera. South America becomes invisible just off beyond the terminator or inside the shadow. We can see the oceans with a definite blue cast, see white bands of major cloud formations across the Earth.
Roger, the ATC is working real well. The F-22 looks good, over. So Apollo 11, Houston, did you copy, over?
Roger, we copied that, Charlie.
If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
What was the temperature like in the spacecraft on the moon?
Well, the lunar module that was the vehicle that we landed on the moon, it was just like this room we're sitting in here right now. We had a thermostat, and it worked a little different than the air conditioning in a house or a building. However, it had the same effect. So if it was too hot, we moved it up a little cooler, and so we could get just the right temperature we wanted. Now, when we put on our spacesuits and closed them up, then we had a backpack on, and in that back was essentially an air conditioner too, a different kind, a kind that would work in a vacuum, and then we could keep our suits the right temperature, because human beings, even though we've got a lot of good capabilities, you know, our brains are amazing, our eyes are amazing, we don't perform well if we're not within a really narrow temperature band. If we get too hot, we sweat, we don't do well. If we get too cold, we shiver and we don't do well. So it's important for human beings to have temperature control, and of course we do that on Earth real well.
If the LEM didn't have climate control, and had air in it, would it be hot or cold without the climate control?
If you just took a lunar module and well, let's take the climate control and it fails. All right, what happens then? You've got air setting there, it's 70 degrees. If the lunar module is setting in the sun, which it always is, then slowly but surely that temperature inside is going to go up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Now you ain't going to make it because you're going to cook long before that.
What powered the air conditioning?
What powered the air? Batteries. You had a number of big batteries in the lunar module. They powered pumps, they powered the air conditioning, they powered the communication system, and that's the reason we were only able to stay on the moon 33 hours. Later on, we got a little better batteries, more batteries, and we could stay longer. But batteries turned out to be, for the weight involved, the thing that gave you the power. Now the best. Now the command module, which had to last from the moon and back 10, 12 days, then batteries would have been too heavy. And so we used fuel cells there, which took hydrogen and oxygen and put them together and made electricity. So it depends on, like in a car, you wouldn't want a fuel cell now because a battery can do the job. But if you were trying to replace the engine, maybe you could use some fuel cells to drive the motors. It'd be too expensive now, but maybe someday.
What was the power of the engine that descended to the moon?
The rocket engine?
Yeah.
The rocket engine that we used to descend to the moon was a very simple rocket engine. It operated at low pressure so that it was like running your car at 30 miles an hour, not running your car like a race car. The engines we used to launch from Earth was like running your car at race car speeds, you know. So everything had to be just right. But we were interested in safety paramount right there. We didn't have last minute checks we could do. We only had one engine, it couldn't fail, so it ran at lower pressure. And when you were in it, you couldn't hear it in the vacuum of space.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No, now I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did.
Beginning at an altitude of 1,000 miles and extending an additional 25,000 miles, lay lethal bands of radiation called the Van Allen radiation belts. Every space mission in history with humans on board, from both the United States and Soviet Union, from the first in 1961 to the present, has been well below this deadly radiation field. Mercury, Gemini, Soyuz, Skylab, the Space Shuttle, all maintained altitudes well below 1,000 miles. All except Apollo.
I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt, and if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem. You don't just build something and hope it works. You study to see what the threats are, the environment is, and then you say, how thick do I have to make the metal on the spacecraft so that going through this kind of radiation or these kind of meteoroids, it won't get hurt. And so then we build it that way.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
Then we went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
We didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
In 1998, the Space Shuttle flew to an altitude of 350 miles, one of its highest altitudes ever, hundreds of miles below the beginning of a field of radiation that was so severe that the astronauts inside of their shielded spacecraft and inside of their shielded spacesuits saw flashes of light with their eyes shut that they described as shooting stars, due to radiation penetrating first the shuttle's shielding, then their spacesuit shielding, then their skulls, and finally the retinas of their closed eyes. As a result, CNN issued the following report noting NASA's unpredicted surprise. The radiation belt surrounding Earth may be more dangerous for spacewalking astronauts than previously believed. Scientists say the phenomena known as the Van Allen belts can spawn killer electrons when the Earth's magnetic field changes. These electrons that are being studied could have an important effect, not only on satellites, which has happened in the past, but could also affect the astronauts by creating large doses of radiation that could influence their health. The electrons can penetrate through various materials, including spacesuits, and can pass through, in fact, the walls of the space station, and can create high charges deep inside of these objects.
No strange occurrences?
Nothing like that.
The space shuttle...
Go ahead.
The space shuttle went to 365 miles a few years ago. Because I worked in news. I saw CNN. They said that the radiation belts surrounding Earth are more dangerous than previously believed because the astronauts saw shooting stars with their eyes closed. Just when they got within 600.
Radiation belt. We saw shooting stars, but they're not shooting stars from with your eyes closed, although they look like it. If you're out in space beyond the Van Allen belt, and probably within the Van Allen belt, and close your eyes and just pay attention. You don't notice it unless you pay attention. Then all of a sudden you'll see a little flash like a shooting star, except it's like that. There goes one this way. Then one just blossoms. And then not that fast. Maybe you wait 3 minutes or 2 minutes and one goes whoosh. And what's happening is cosmic rays are hitting the back of your eye and exciting those sensors in the back of your eye. So that's what you see. And they got high enough apparently to close it. My guess is in Earth orbit, if you closed your eyes and just paid attention, that you would see them.
The first time they were seen was when they went to 365 miles.
Yes.
That's 650 miles below or away from the radiation.
Yeah, see, it's below. My guess if they just did it tonight. But see, if you're just going to sleep or closing your eyes or it's dark, you don't notice them. But if you'll close your eyes and pay attention, which we had an experiment to do, by the way, then you see them whistling by. Not on our mission, by the way, they hadn't been discovered yet. I saw them one day on the moon. It wasn't dark, and it was kind of dark, and I saw this flash of light, and it looked like it was on the moon, but really it wasn't. It was a flash of light in my eye.
Where were you when the Apollo 1 fire happened?
Apollo 1 fire, I was in my office at the Johnson Space Center. It was about 6 in the evening. I was working late there at my desk. I got a phone call, and a voice on the other end said their name, and I said, okay. They said, I knew who it was. It was the flight director or someone down at the Cape during the test, and he said, we've lost the Apollo 1 crew. We think we've lost the Apollo 1 crew. I said, well, where are they?
Have you ever read the congressional report on that?
Sure.
They considered it, at that point, that it would be extremely difficult to go to the moon within 2.5 years from that point.
We did. We thought it would be. But
so what big change happened to make it possible?
Well, once again, with what we knew at that time, it looked like that would be difficult. So, but we started out on the journey anyway, and as we started on the journey, we found ways to shorten it. For example, we had a lot more flights planned prior to landing on the moon than we actually did. For example, testing the Saturn V. George Miller, one of the smart guys up there in headquarters, said, we're going to test, we've tested on the ground the S4B and the S1 and the S2 sorta. We're going to put them all together and test them all at once because we've run out of time and we want to get to the moon by the end of the decade. And people thought that was a crazy idea. People said, no way, it's too many unknowns. We couldn't possibly do that. There's no way, and George Miller kept saying, if we want to get to the moon by the end of the decade, we're going to have to do this. And I can remember when that was proposed, I thought it was a real crazy idea, not very good idea. Looking back, it was a great idea. Now, von Braun might have been in favor of it or he might not, but I'm sure if we asked him after it was all done, he would have said, what a great idea. We never thought of that when it began, and that compressed maybe the flight schedule by a whole year or maybe 8 months or something like that. We did a lot of that. We had a goal to get to the moon by the end of the decade, and we were trying to do it. That doesn't mean we were being careless, but it meant we were doing everything we possibly could to make that goal that President Kennedy set for us. And we did, in fact, make it.
Now, you mentioned the guys who thought we didn't go to the moon. This must be what you're talking about?
What?
We found that. I guess you're familiar with the Fox special.
Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with it. I watched it, yes. It's a good, it's a money-making thing. They don't have the landing legs extended. You know why? It won't hold the lunar module up on Earth. But that's not, those landing legs aren't extended. But, you know, this is some, you know, guys stand around saying, how can I make some money and make a movie? Well, I can make porno. That's good.
I'm a filmmaker, and I've been in the business about 15 years, and I've been asked even to testify in court as to the authenticity of footage. And I saw this footage. It's dated by an atomic clock 3 days into the flight. All the astronauts are identified, and they're there putting the transparency over the window. They're clearly pretending to be halfway to the moon when they're not halfway to the moon.
That is bullshit. I don't care what you say. I went to the moon and back, and everyone that's a scientist knows it. Now, if you want to not believe it, it's okay, you know? It's okay. It's a better story. It just happens to be a lie, that's all.
Would you swear to on the Bible that you walked on the moon?
I'm not going to do it because I'll do it over here. I won't do it on your camera.
Well, why not?
Because it just isn't an appropriate thing to do.
Well,
but you're an asshole to do that. You're the same guys, just different guys that did the other person I told you about.
Well, would you put your hand on, if you walked on the moon, here's the opportunity to set the record straight, to put your left hand on the Bible.
Left hand.
Raise your right hand.
Okay.
And you realize this can be used as a video deposition in the future. And if you lie, you'll be guilty of perjury.
I understand that.
Okay. Say your name.
My name is Alan Bean.
I swear to God and affirm.
I swear to God and affirm.
Under penalty of perjury.
Under penalty of perjury.
Treason.
Treason. No, not treason. Treason has nothing to do with it. Let me rephrase this and say, I've got my hand on the Bible. I went to the moon. I walked on the moon. All the other people that you think are people that NASA says went to the moon and walked on the moon go to the moon and walk on the moon.
You won't say under penalty of treason.
What's treasonous?
That's doing something fraudulent to the taxpayers.
That's crap.
Well, what
that
about
isn't treason.
Under penalty of eternal damnation?
Under penalty of eternal damnation.
And under penalty of treason?
Treason is when you sell out your country.
Well, if you used $135 billion to not go to the moon.
That's still not treason. Treason is if you tell secrets to another thing. I've said enough. Now, you can use that and say, well, you didn't say something else.
No.
I know how people are. It's okay.
Well,
take your stuff and get the fuck out.
I've asked 6 other astronauts if they would swear on the Bible, and they refused to do it. Neil Armstrong refused to do it.
He just thinks, I know that. I know they do.
Now, do you believe in God?
Do I?
Yeah.
Pretty much. I wouldn't swear on the Bible if I didn't believe it. But it doesn't make any difference. You'll change it like you want. Take your stuff and go, guys. Why don't you?
Well, I know for a fact you didn't walk on the moon.
That's fine. That's fine. It's okay if you know it. Do you understand that? You can have any opinion you want. That's what's wonderful about this country. You can believe anything you want. And it's okay with me, for sure.
Right.
Get your stuff and go.
Okay.